I don't know about you, but I am still caffeinated. I've had that energy drink. Let's get into part 3 of Fortress Fundamentals. In this part, we are going to talk and focus on privacy. We're going to talk about that delicate balance between privacy and security, etc. Right? So let's go ahead and jump right in. For this section, by the way, on privacy, I highly recommend get those notes out, take those notes. There's a lot of stuff on the IC3 certification that is covered here, in the way of domains 1.1, understanding security, 5.1, understanding data security. We get a little bit into that, and a little bit into 1.5, understanding governance. So again, you see a gray term followed by an orange definition. That's a term you may see. So privacy is the fundamental right allowing individuals to control the distribution of their information. Now, we're talking about digital privacy mostly, okay? But privacy pertains to people not being able to look in your window, not look in your backyard. If you're out there sunbathing, not fly drones over companies, that kind of stuff, right? So in the digital age, we have to understand that balance between privacy and security. And I'm going to give you a great example of this and leave it to you to decide if it's breaking that balance. In the last section, we're going to look at AI and look at some software around, basically using cameras and AI to do some identifications. And it's going to really surprise you. So stick around for that. But alongside relevant laws and regulations that we have to follow in the way of security and in the way of privacy. Okay, so jumping in, that balance, information assurance, the concept involves, protecting information from unauthorized access and modification, right? Data integrity. Hugely, hugely important, right? It's why we encrypt data. It's why we secure personal identifiable information, right? It's why we have robust security measures like monitoring, surveillance, security, etc., that can't infringe on personal privacy, but that we spend hundreds of thousands and in some cases millions of dollars in budget annually to protect that data, to protect facilities, right? If you've never driven by a data center, I highly suggest drive by a data center. Look at the physical security, the bollards, the gates, the cameras, the guards, etc. That's just to keep you from getting in, not to mention the policies, right, of entering the building. So middle ground organizations must balance protecting sensitive data with respecting individuals' privacy. How much of that personal identifiable information are we keeping? How are we securing our customers' information? Just because it's become a daily thing in the way of hearing about a data breach doesn't mean it's acceptable. It doesn't mean it's okay. And it doesn't give us the right not to protect user data. An effective approach is to adopt policies, technologies that provide robust security while minimizing the collection and retention of personal data. If it's personal data we're not going to use in conducting our business, we should not be saving it. So there it is, the balance between privacy and security. So data protection concepts, how do we protect data? Well, first of all, we need to understand what data has to be protected. And part of that data is personal identifiable information. Or, we're all computer nerds. We love our 3-letter acronyms. So PII. PII is any information that can distinguish or trace an individual's identity. That's a very broad definition, okay? Social security number, biometric records, digital signatures, social security numbers, dates of birth, address. I could just go on and on and on, right? In addition to that, there's PHI, or protected health information. And that includes, health records, right? Regarding an individual's health status, healthcare provision, payment of healthcare, insurance information, insurance payments, etc. And a lot of this is detailed in HIPAA, which we'll talk about briefly in a minute, right? So we also need to understand what it is we need to protect, and that's records and records retention. So records are, documented evidence of activities or results. A birth record, a date and time that you visited, a diagnosis if we're talking about healthcare, right? Customer information when I went and took out a loan for an automobile. Those are records, right? Records retention it involves, keeping these records for a necessary period of time. And each state has different record retention laws, typically between 5 and 10 years, okay, as it pertains to PHI, okay? I don't know if that pertains to PII as well. But PHI, 5 to 10 years, medical records. A hospital retaining patient records for a legally mandated duration before disposal, and then proper disposal. What does proper disposal look like? Paper record, it may just be shredded, right? That may be acceptable disposal. Although we've seen those movies where they put those shredded pieces of paper back together, right? And I kind of think, wow, an AI program that could scan those would put them back together pretty quick. Yeah, folks, if you haven't figured out already, I am constantly thinking like a hacker. It doesn't mean that I'm doing things illegally, immorally, that I shouldn't be doing, but if I'm thinking like a hacker, I'm protecting from hackers. So hopefully that makes sense. So data integrity, ensures that data remains unaltered during storage. We talked about this in chapter 1, right? Processing when it's in transit, right? Techniques like checksums, we talked about hashing in the last section, cryptographic hashes to verify its accuracy. So every time I download a new version of Kali Linux, Kali gives me the 256 SHA hash. I make sure it matches my download before I install it. Definitely, right? Do that with all software. Data loss prevention, so, refers to systems designed to detect and prevent unauthorized use and transmission of information. Where is that information moving from? Where is it going to? When does it return into our systems? Okay? And remnants, so, we're ready to destroy that data. We wipe the disk. Is that good enough? Just formatting a disk? The answer is no, absolutely not. Now, what's surprising is when I was younger and first learning computing, we would just go down to the local landfill, to the computer section, right? We grab computers, throw them open, grab that hard drive, take it home, slave it to our system. It wasn't encrypted and we could see everything. It was a great way to learn forensics. Great way. I spent hours and hours and hours doing that, right? Now, if the drive was wiped, i.e. formatted, that's a different story, right? It doesn't mean we can't get data back because there are remnants of data on there and programs that are readily available that will read and get back data, right? So we have to think about how many times we need to overwrite. There's different policies and regulations that you need to follow, okay? There is a program I have called Kill Disk that has many different destruction policies so that that media can be reused, okay? I think we're going to see that a lot more when it pertains to SSDs at the cost of SSDs versus physical destruction of the drive, okay? But that is an option, physical destruction of the drive. So there are companies that will come out, you pull those hard drives out, or you do it yourself, you run them through, you cut them in half, you cut them in quarters, and no longer can that data be brought back, right? Additional data protection concepts, so data minimization, right? That strategy, like I suggested earlier, of reducing the amount of data collected. If we're not going to use it, we don't want to store it. We don't want to have, especially a bunch of personal identifiable information that could potentially be hacked that we're not using in conducting our business on a daily basis. Why do we need to store it? There's also the fact that there's the cost to storing it. There's a huge cost to backing it up multiple times. And the biggest cost, again, is a data breach. Okay? So reduce the amount of data stored. Also, makes those databases run faster. Privacy by design. So this is a concept of integrating privacy into design and development of products and services from the onset. So ensuring privacy is considered at every stage. This is physical privacy. This is data privacy. This is building software that automatically encrypts data. Okay, that automatically encrypts personal identifiable information. And as I said previously, here we are, July 12th. So what was that? Yesterday, nearly all AT&T cell customers' call and text records exposed in a massive data breach. Now, what they are saying is not the actual call, not the actual text message, but all the data around it. And think what a hacker could do with all of that data, right? Wow, amazing. Again, just because we hear about these breaches does not mean it's acceptable. So, additional key privacy. Now let's talk about regulations. So, we're going to talk about 4 key regulations that you could see on the ISC. You need to understand regulations. We're going to do a whole chapter on risk and risk management and all of the things associated with that at the end. That's called managing the maze, compliance, risk management, and governance. Okay, but it does start with policy. Because companies weren't managing data well, we get regulations we now have to follow. So one that you're probably familiar with is HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Okay, this primarily focuses on healthcare records. You might see this at your local pharmacy where other people have to form a line away from the person talking, so there's that confidentiality. It's everything from that physical risk of data discovery, right, to how we retain data, what we do with PHI, ePHI, etc. Okay? Payment card industry data security standards, so a set of security standards ensuring that all companies handling credit card information maintain a secure environment to protect cardholder data and prevent breaches. And yet, we still hear about these breaches, right? Not as much anymore because regulations are put into effect and audits are done for how well we're protecting this data, right? How are we storing credit card numbers? Are they encrypted, right? Are they away from other data within the database? That kind of stuff, right? So general data protection, so European Union, they do a great job, in my opinion, well before the United States, in my opinion. They've already got policy on AI that we don't from a national level, right? That's an example. So comprehensive EU data privacy law mandating that organizations implement data protection measures, obtain, explicit consent before collecting data, you name it. So they do, again, a great job. And this has forced companies like Google and Microsoft and et cetera to adopt these rules for data within those countries, additional protection for their citizens, right? And for corporations as well who have to follow this, who do business there. Finally, California Consumer Privacy Act, so a California law granting residents the right to know what personal data is collected, how to access it, how to delete it, how to opt out of its sale, okay? Requiring organizations to implement robust data protection practices. So we're going to see that in a lot of them. Data protection covered in HIPAA, right? Covered in GDPR, covered in CCPA. So finally for this section, I just want to introduce you briefly to some privacy measures. You're probably familiar with these. A virtual private network. It's a secure communication mechanism that encrypts data transmitting between networks. Okay? And the example that I give, right, is accessing public Wi-Fi. I will never, ever, ever access public Wi-Fi without a VPN. It's one quick step. So I go to a coffee house, I fire up my laptop, I connect an encrypted VPN connection from my computer back to my network, maybe a third-party VPN, to ensure that all of the data that I'm transferring is encrypted through that tunnel, right? Don't make an assumption that it is. Don't make an assumption that just because you had to have a username and password and the Wi-Fi signal is encrypted, that there's not a man in the middle. That is a pretty common attack with a Wi-Fi pineapple, to create a Wi-Fi network with an SSID that matches a popular coffee shop, sit there, you connect that pineapple to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi, but now you're a man in the middle and you can get data that way. Okay? Onion router. So when we talk about, privacy while surfing the web, etc., this is where Tor comes in. It's a free open source software. In the textbook, there's a case study on it. It'll give you the history of Tor, where it came about. This has really affected the world in the way of censorship, because countries where people's voices are censored, their thoughts are censored, their writing are censored, they can use Tor to get that message out. Okay, so again, what is it? It's a tunneling mechanism. It routes your traffic all over. It becomes very, very difficult to track the origin, right, of the information being sent over the big I internet. All right, folks, so that's enough for this section. I'll see you in the last section, part 4. We'll talk about physical security in the next section. See you then.